Hello, everyone, and welcome to Penning the Past. I'm Dean Glass, and I thank you for joining us today. We're very pleased to welcome back architect and author David Marshall. David is the president and principal architect at Heritage Architecture and Planning, where he has led major rehabilitation and restoration projects for many of San Diego's most treasured historic sites, including the Hotel del Coronado, the Spreckels Organ Pavilion, and the House of Hospitality. He has also served as board president of the California Preservation Foundation and currently chairs the AIA San Diego Preservation Committee. Today, David will take us on a journey through the history of Balboa Park, exploring its remarkable transformation from city park in 1868 to its celebrated role as the centerpiece of two international expositions, a cultural and recreational hub, and one of America's most treasured urban parks. He will also share some of the little-known stories behind the park's development and how community efforts help save it from neglect and demolition. And now, please join me in welcoming David Marshall.
Thank you, Dean. Pleased to be here. Thank you to Soho for inviting me to talk about my book, San Diego's Balboa Park. Okay. This is the cover of the book. This book came out in 2007. It's part of the Arcadia series, which many of you are familiar with. This particular series from Arcadia is called the Postcard History Series. So all of the images you see in this book or in this presentation are historic postcards from my own collection. And they're basically, I'm going to cover not only the two expositions in the park, but also the time before, between, and after the expositions, up until more recent years. So I'm going to be following the format of the chapters. This presentation will go for about 50 minutes, and then we'll do Q&A at the end. As Dean mentioned, my name is David Marshall, and I'm an architect, not a historian, but I do learn about the buildings that we work on because we specialize in historic preservation. And one of my first big projects was in Balboa Park. So that was the first postcards I collected ever were of Balboa Park. Um, this is an interesting one. Just a little bit about the park history, and then I'll talk about this postcard. Balboa Park began when San Diego civic leaders created a 1,400 acre park, and it was just called City Park in 1868. That was when it was first established. In 1910, a contest was held to rename the park, and that's when they selected Balboa Park after explorer Vasco Núñez de Balboa, who in 1513 was the first European to see the Pacific Ocean. The watershed moment for Balboa Park came in 1915-16 when San Diego held the Panama, California Exposition to celebrate the completion of the Panama Canal. And that's what this postcard relates to. San Diego's boosters wanted the world to know that their large natural bay would be the closest American Pacific Coast port to Panama. In 1909, when the city's desire to host the exposition was announced, this is an important fact here. San Diego's population at that time was only 39,000 people. It was the smallest of any city ever to attempt an international exposition. In the official guidebook, they declared that even though San Diego's event was, quote, not the largest World's Fair ever held, it would be the most interesting as well as the most beautiful, end quote. San Diego's expo attracted 3.8 million visitors and was extended a second year through 1916 as well. So this particular postcard, as you can see, it's called The Kiss of the Oceans. And this actually, it was created to promote San Francisco's competing exposition called the Panama Pacific International Exposition. And that's the one that became the official nationally recognized expo of 1915. The text for San Francisco, notice how it's significantly larger than the text for San Diego. And the statistics at the upper right note that the route between New York and San Francisco would be shortened by 8,415 miles once the Panama Canal was completed. And of course, the kiss is happening at the location of the canal where the Gulf and the Pacific Ocean meet. So this is a 1913 postcard which depicts many buildings that were never actually built because it's as a rendering, it's not a true photograph. One can pick out the California building and tower near the Cabrillo Bridge, and I'm going to use my pointer here. Cabrillo Bridge is here, different design, California Tower at the end here. Um, there are the two towers in front of the Varied Industries building, which is now the Casa del Prado. Those are visible here. But many other aspects of this image are different than the way it was actually constructed. Um, Note the absence of the organ pavilion, and there was also a large lake that was proposed at center left here, which is where the Japanese Friendship Garden now stands. Of course, that was never constructed. Downtown Coronado Island and Point Loma could also be seen in the distance. This was part of the postcard day cards that were printed for mass mailing, a mass mailing that was held on March 17th, 1913. Some 50,000 postcards were sent by the State Societies of San Diego in an effort to boost the profile of the city and the exposition. The groundbreaking celebrations for the Panama, California Exposition took place between July 19th and 22nd in 1911, 4 years before the expo. The event was known as the San Diego Pageant. Religious ceremonies began the first day of celebrations at a temporary altar in a shallow canyon in Balboa Park after the procession walked to the park from St. Joseph's Church on 4th and Beach Streets. You can see the crowd and notice how there are no trees. It's just basically sagebrush. The second chapter is about the 1915 Expo once it opened, called the Fantasy Spanish City. The beautifully simple 916-foot long Puente Cabrillo was designed and engineered by Exposition Director of Works Frank P. Allen Jr. and was modeled after a Roman aqueduct. The bridge incorporates 270,000 cubic feet of concrete, despite being hollow. Postcards rarely depict the construction process, but this card showed the citizens of San Diego that progress was being made on their expo. Note the simultaneous construction of the California building at the upper right. This formwork here is for the California Tower, not yet constructed. This aerial view shows the extent of the exposition grounds. Note that the lack of development in most of the park, in the rest of the park. The large boxy structure at the upper right, over here, was the War of the Worlds exhibit. It was on the Isthmus as part of the Fun Zone. The many tents of the 4th Marine Regiment, 2nd Battalion, can be seen at right center, right down here. Those are all tents. The Marines were under the command of Colonel Joseph H. Pendleton, whose name carries on today. This is the view that visitors saw when entering the 1915 exposition as they passed through the West Gate. The tower and dome of the California building create a memorable first impression. The uniformed man in the foreground is a Balboa Park or a Balboa guard, and he was one of many that were stationed throughout the grounds, quote, to be of service to visitors in all reasonable ways, end quote. I'm not sure what unreasonable ways there were, but that's what the card says. According to Keystone, that was the quote from the Keystone View Company card. The quote at the top was added by me, but that's a quote from George Marston about this entry into the park and how you really are, even today, find yourself in another world. So this is the center of the park, the Plaza de Panama. The plaza served as a primary gathering space for the expo. It functioned very much like a European town square and provided space for fairgoers to step back and appreciate the park's Spanish colonial revival architecture. The plaza was not paved at the time. It was topped with a sandy, decomposed granite. It was basically a very flexible function space. So this is along El Prado, just past the California building, the Science and Education building. This is one of the first buildings that visitors saw when they entered the exposition grounds from the west. The building, unfortunately, was demolished in 1964 and replaced by the Museum of Art Sculpture Garden. The original architectural plans for the building are still on file at the Central Library, and there are hopes it could one day be reconstructed. Note the carefully groomed rows of black acacia trees along El Prado. Now, the plans for this site are not to reconstruct this building currently by the museum, but I know Soho is negotiating with them to see if there could be some common ground. A little bit further down is the Foreign Arts Building. This structure was inspired by the Hospital of Santa Cruz in Toledo, Spain. The coat of arms on the exterior walls represent countries of the Pan American Union. The building housed lacquerwork, bronze, and silk from Japan and China. In addition, artisans and craftsmen from the Orient, Russia, and Italy displayed embroidery, wood carvings, and glass cutting. The building was rechristened the House of Hospitality for the second expo in the park in 1935. This once temporary structure was made permanent when it was reconstructed in 1997, and I was happily the project architect for that. The award-winning reconstruction included replacing the staff plaster ornamentation, which is temporary, with permanent concrete, and meticulously restoring and reinstalling over 6,000 original features that were dismantled and reinstalled. This Buddhist temple-like pavilion was surrounded by gardens and a flowing stream to create a traditional Japanese setting. According to the 1915 guidebook, quote, "He who is able to cross the moon bridge without slipping on its shapely curved surface, is assured a long life," end quote. All the parts for the tea house were actually made in Japan and shipped to San Diego, where Japanese carpenters assembled the house using traditional building techniques. Inside the building, women in silk kimonos served tea, rice cakes, and green ice cream on bamboo mats. In 1955, at the urging of the Zoological Society, the tea house and garden were demolished to make way for the Children's Zoo. In 1991, Japanese culture returned to Balboa Park when the 11.5-acre Japanese Friendship Garden was built just north of the Spreckels Organ Pavilion. This is a building I think a lot of us wish was still in the park. Another lost building. This imposing structure was sponsored by the 7 counties of Imperial, Los Angeles, Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino, San Diego, and Ventura. The symmetrical design was marked by 2 towers that framed a large forecourt. The 2-level arcade was inspired by the convent of St. Augustine in Querétaro, Mexico. In the 1920s, the Southern California Counties building, it became a 3,000-seat civic auditorium. On November 25th, 1925, the building was destroyed by a spectacular fire. According to the San Diego Union, quote, "The fire started at about 7 o'clock as the auditorium was being made ready for the annual Firemen's Ball." That's a true story. "The flames shot hundreds of feet into the air and were seen in all parts of the city," end quote. When I first heard that story, I thought it was an urban legend, but in fact, it did occur. In 1933, the Natural History Museum was built on the site. So now you know where this building was. One of the purposes of the 1915 exposition was to promote San Diego's ideal climate for growing virtually anything. A full 24 pages of the exposition guidebook were dedicated to listing the plantings done in years in advance throughout the fairgrounds. The formal gardens seen here and Citrus Grove were located on 5 acres north of the Southern California Counties building. Note the Isthmus Fun Zone and the roller coaster at the upper left. Right up here is the roller coaster. Now, if you all know the huge Morton Bay fig tree with the deck around it that was added by the Friends of Balboa Park, we believe that fig tree is right here. It was planted we know it was planted in 1915. So that gives you an idea. This area now with the Citrus Grove is where the Spanish Village Arts Center is. This building, which architect Bertram Goodhue described as having a, quote, long florid facade, end quote, was built south of the House of Hospitality. The design of this building was unique for the exposition because it had no exterior arcade. This is the interior of that building. It was used primarily to display goods of Central California. In addition to exhibits about mining and fruit growing, the beautiful interior featured unique decorations in fine grains and grasses, which covered panels on the walls and ceiling. So those depictions of various scenes were actually done out of grains of rice and other natural materials. The San Joaquin Valley building fell into disrepair and was demolished prior to the 1935 exposition. This was located on the edge of the canyon where the current Japanese Friendship Garden entrance is. Everybody knows this building. The south end of the esplanade terminated at the Spreckels Organ Pavilion, one of the most unique structures in Balboa Park. Millionaire sugar magnate and railroad tycoon, and also developer, John D. Spreckels and his brother Adolph B. Spreckels donated the building to the exposition. Spreckels brought in his own architect from Los Angeles, Harrison Albright, to design the pavilion into a style more Greek than Spanish. Only 15 of the large pipes in the arched opening were actually functional. The rest were for appearances only. In the bowels of the organ house, the real pipes, ranging in size from 32 feet to only a few inches, did the real work. By 2007, there were 4,518 pipes distributed among 5 divisions. The Spreckels Organ Pavilion was one of the few permanent structures built in 1915. The only other permanent structures intended to remain were the Cabrillo Bridge, the Botanical Building, and the California Building. At night, the pavilion's 1,734 exterior lights, yes, I counted them, include 112 rooftop finials with flame-shaped glass globes. The reason I know how many lights there were is because my office did the lighting restoration of this building around 2006 when it was fully upgraded. This is not a postcard, but it's a photo of John Spreckels, who, of course, was very important to the history of San Diego and had that great bushy white mustache, handlebar mustache. And I always thought he looked familiar, and I recently put two and two together and realized he's the spitting image of the Monopoly millionaire. And I wonder if he was the inspiration for it. But they certainly have a separated at birth connection there. This small structure is reminiscent of the mission San Luis Rey in Oceanside. The men pictured here are standing on a rooftop of the veranda. In 1916, this building changed its name and use to the Theosophical Headquarters. And then in 1935, it was used as the press building with a full-time bartender. Um, Now, I thought this building, when I started writing the book, I had this postcard, but I thought the building was gone. I didn't realize that it had just been heavily modified. And this is the way it looks today without the top of the tower. And it serves as the Hall of Nations and House of Italy building. And they even filled in some of the arcades on the right-hand side. So maybe someday this could be restored to its original look. The next chapter is dedicated to an important tenant in the park, the San Diego Zoo. In 1916, Dr. Harry Wedgeforth formed the San Diego Zoological Society. Strong public interest and generous donations followed, and by 1922, the San Diego Zoo had a permanent home in Balboa Park. This tiny structure once served as the main entrance to the zoo. In 2007, when I wrote the book, the 123-acre San Diego Zoo was home to over 4,000 animals, many rare and endangered. Of course, most of you know, or many of you may know, that the original animals to the zoo were actually leftover animals from the 1915 exposition. that were really had nowhere to go. I guess they were homeless. This postcard shows two views of Jiggs, the pipe-smoking orangutan. Jiggs and his wife, Maggie, were popular attractions at the zoo in the 1930s. While smoking is still allowed in designated areas of the zoo, pipe-smoking primates are a thing of the past. In later years, Ken Allen, one of the zoo's orangutans, became famous for his creative escapes. He had a fan club, t-shirts, bumper stickers, and even a song in his honor. The next chapter is about a chapter of Balboa Park's history that not a lot of people are aware of, which is when the Navy moved in and basically took over the whole park. On April 6, 1917, the United States declared war on Germany and entered World War I. The U.S. Navy quickly transformed the empty exposition buildings in Balboa Park to San Diego's first naval training station. This image was taken in 1918 from the roof of the House of Hospitality, looking west across the Plaza de Panama. The handwritten message on the back of the card reads, quote, "How do you like this flag? It takes quite a few men to make a flag like this," end quote. According to the caption, it actually takes 3,400 sailors to make the Navy flag. The Plaza de Panama was the scene of a wide variety of Navy activities. The June 24th, 1917 San Diego Union reported, quote, "At a bayonet drill Thursday morning, several of the apprentice seamen did not go through the exercise with the vigor demanded by the instructor, a husky gunner's mate with a foghorn voice. The voice boomed clear across the Plaza de Panama. Right thrust, parry, left thrust, lunge," shouted the instructor. "Now listen, shipmate, you haven't got a pitchfork in your hands. Handle that gun as if you were face to face with a German," end quote. We don't see too many bayonets, thankfully, in the plaza these days. In this image, more than 5,000 officers, enlisted men, and their friends enjoyed an evening dance on the Plaza de Panama. The Home Economy building to the left and the Foreign Arts building, House Hospitality, is at the center. In 1918, the San Diego Union reported, quote, "The opening round of a 5-week boxing tourney will be held Monday evening, August 12th, on the Plaza de Panama, and will consist of 6 bouts," end quote. It is not clear whether this postcard shows that particular event, but since almost everyone except the boxers are looking at the camera, it is clear that the photo was staged. The Navy had to be creative in order to find water for training. In this postcard, recruits learned to swim in the 4.5 foot deep lagoon in front of the Botanical Building. The July 8th, 1918 San Diego Union reported, quote, "Jack gets instruction on 2 regulation Navy 25-foot cutters in the swimming pool. The pool is too small for maneuvering, but nevertheless, by the time his instructions are finished, he has learned the handling of oars and sails. Here, too, he gets swimming lessons. Jack really learns to swim before he ever strikes the water. But whether he has learned to swim or not, the pool is a greater attraction during those summer days than any other form of attraction," end quote. And unlike the ocean, Balboa Park's weak swimmers could actually cheat by walking on the bottom. You can see this guy, I think, has had enough. He's headed out. The next chapter is talking about the time between the first and the second exposition. On the site that was once occupied by the Sacramento Valley Building, the Fine Arts Gallery was built in 1926. In 1935, it was renamed the Palace of Fine Arts and is now the San Diego Museum of Art. The structure was designed in the Spanish Colonial Revival style by famed San Diego architect William Templeton Johnson. Johnson also designed the Serra Museum on Presidio Hill in 1929 and the Museum of Natural History in 1933. Now, this is a close-up photo that I took of the some of the ornamentation on the frontispiece above the main entrance. Now, this work was all sculpted by Chris Mueller, excuse me, and his son Chris Jr. The junior Mueller would go on to sculpt for Disneyland's Haunted Mansion and the Jungle Boat Ride. And further research revealed that he also worked in Hollywood and helped sculpt the giant squid from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea in 1954 and the title character from The Creature from the Black Lagoon, also in 1954. It looks like the creature is on his cell phone here, but I'm sure he's just got a scratch. Uh, so if anybody ever asks you the connection between the Museum of Art and The Creature from the Black Lagoon, you can tell them that story. The Commerce and Industries Building was the home of the Museum of Natural History prior to the completion of their own building in 1933. This is a rare view of one of the typical interiors, which was unadorned. Note the simple whitewashed wood posts and trusses and the wood floor. This is the way all of the exposition buildings looked like on the interior. Large skylights and high windows provide natural daylighting. This building, unfortunately, was destroyed by fire in 1978 when it was occupied by the Aerospace Museum. And it was rebuilt and is now the Casa de Balboa, where the San Diego History Center is located, and the Photographic Museum. This chapter is about the second expo in 1935. The main square, christened Plaza de Panama in 1915, was renamed Plaza del Pacifico in 1935. The large reflecting pools in the foreground and the arched tower were temporary, and additions to the plaza were removed when the fair ended in 1936. The name Plaza del Pacifico never actually stuck. Here, a view of the Arch of the Future with its night lighting looking south to the Organ Pavilion in the distance. Violet, blue, red, and green lights were used to paint the palms and bougainvillea and other landscape features. The official guidebook stated, "The lighting experts of America's exposition have created the world's greatest nocturnal spectacle in illumination. Even the stars shine more brightly for the rivalry," end quote. On top of the Organ Pavilion in the background, they had a lighting feature they called the Aurora Borealis, and that could be seen for miles. Now, this, of course, is a colorized postcard that's probably a little bit exaggerated. Modeled after the Ford Company's building at the 1933 Chicago Century of Progress Exposition, which was designed by architect Albert Kahn, this structure is one of the rare modern buildings erected in the park. Well-known industrial designer Walter Dorwin Teague used Kahn's earlier design as the source of inspiration for this Balboa Park building. This is an early rendering showing the original design of the structure, complete with a telescoping tower that topped out at 198 feet, almost as tall as the California Tower. Architect Richard Requa and Louis Bodemer oversaw the design and construction, which proved to be an immense challenge due to the extremely short construction schedule. After the drawings were complete by the Ford Motor Company, they abruptly decided to shrink the building due to budgetary reasons. This, of course, was in the years following the Great Depression. According to Requa's account in his 1937 book, quote, "The seemingly impossible task of trying to complete the Ford building on time created in him an overwhelming desire to wander off into a peaceful glade in the park, fall asleep, and forget it all," end quote. The building was completed on time, shorter version, which can be seen here. The streamlined modern design for the Ford building recalls a stack of automobile gears. The vertical ribs were dramatically backlit with blue neon, and the name Ford appeared in red neon on all four sides of the main rotunda. Exhibits inside included a mock assembly line, examples of Ford cars since 1896, and the mighty V8 engine. The walls inside the building on the walls were 12 colored dioramas, which gave a picture story of the production of various materials used in the manufacture of Ford cars. and that mural is still there. A large open-air courtyard in the center of the building contained the latest Ford models around a large fountain shaped like the V8 logo. The Ford building has housed the San Diego Air and Space Museum since 1980, after their original home burned down. The most talked about aspect of this building was the House of Magic, and this was known as the Electricity and Varied Industries building. It displayed electrical marvels sponsored by General Electric. The Plaza de America in front of the building contained the Firestone singing colored fountains. The 20-foot wide, 120-foot long fountain contained jets of water and colored light that would rise and fall, synchronized to music from the nearby Ford Bowl, which is now known as the Starlight Bowl. The Palace of Electricity is now a municipal gymnasium, and the Committee 100 is currently restoring the main facade. So you will see this large shield brought back and also the ornamentation around the entranceway, which were stripped off after the expo. This is let's see here. Here we are. This building, the Standard Oil building, featured a 108-foot tall tower to the sun, which was located at the north end of the Plaza de America. The elaborate ornamentation used designs inspired by prehistoric palaces in Mexico and the Yucatan. In the souvenir program, it said the Standard Oil modestly states, particularly notable within the building is the lack of commercialism. The whole of the exhibit is devoted to the story of the national parks of the West. So all their commercialism, I guess, is planted right on that tower. The Old Globe Theater was constructed in 1935 to present 45-minute versions of Shakespeare's plays. The theater seated 315 persons on wooden benches for 25 cents apiece. The building was modeled after Shakespeare's Elizabethan-style London Theater, built in 1599. The Old Globe Theater originally had no roof over its center, as you can see here, but was later covered with canvas after only a few weeks due to the heat that was coming in on the audience. On March 8th, 1978, an arson fire destroyed the Old Globe Theater. The new Old Globe, that is there today, was dedicated in 1982 and bore only a passing resemblance to what was built in 1935. The current Old Globe is widely recognized as one of the finest regional theaters in the country. Many of Hollywood's luminaries made their mark at the Globe before and after the fire, including Dennis Hopper, Marsha Mason, John Voight, Christopher Reeve, Marion Ross, John Goodman, and Christopher Walken. This next chapter is called the Fun Zone, and it's about the various non-educational aspects of the two expositions and the parts that actually made the money for the expo. Today we have bungee jumping, but in 1935, Balboa Park had this ride called the Bailout. Riders would free fall from a 155-foot steel tower attached to a parachute and a steel cable. The Russian military had been using similar towers to train paratroopers since the 1920s. The text on the sign reads, "First time presented in America, get the thrill of a lifetime." A larger parachute jump was a popular attraction at the 1939 New York World's Fair. The Isthmus Fun Zone took its name from the Isthmus of Panama, the narrow strip of land between the Pacific Ocean and the Caribbean Sea. Promoters touted the Isthmus as the best array of entertainment features ever assembled, end quote. The Alhambra Cafeteria was billed as the largest cafeteria in the world at the time, with a seating for 1,200. It featured Coronado clam chowder for 10 cents and roast Belgian hare for 35 cents. The building on the right housed the War of the Worlds exhibit with, quote, an imaginative portrayal of possible war conditions in the year 2000, end quote. Ads were quick to point out that the exhibit did not depict the horrors of war, but was an impressive and thrilling argument for peace. The Chinatown attraction featured an underground opium den where wax figures show the horrors of addiction. Apparently, the organizers of the exposition had second thoughts about the subject matter and conducted some damage control. The exposition Beautiful Picture Book noted that Chinatown attraction, quote, is not a fair representation of the Chinese people in America, end quote, and what it represents has largely passed away. This is probably one of the most interesting buildings that was ever in the park. Uh, this is where visitors could see exotic animals at the Costin Ostrich Farm. The building was modeled after an Egyptian pyramid, probably due to the fact that ostrich feathers were prominent in ancient Egyptian artwork. For a 10-cent ticket, visitors could see the flightless birds up close and admire, quote, an alluring and endless variety of feathers to tempt purchasers, end quote. This is in 1935, and some of those exhibits included, you can see on the left here, Crime Never Pays, which displayed bank robber John Derringer's bulletproof limousine, complete with machine gun portholes. According to the official guide, the Monsters Alive attraction, as seen here on the right, included, quote, reptiles of various descriptions from all parts of the world, including giant pythons and venomous cobras, end quote. The Ripley's Believe It or Not Auditorium, spelled with an O, can also be seen. That's auditorium as an ODD. This 21-acre mining town was located in the canyon behind the Palace of Better Housing, which is now the Casa de Balboa. The official guide referred to Gold Gulch as, quote, a faithful, movified version of the pioneering period, end quote. Also faithful to the Old West was stripper Gold Gulch Gertie, who was arrested for riding naked through Gold Gulch on a burro. Gertie was eventually acquitted and rode again with police supervision. The Japanese Friendship Garden now occupies this site. This was also, there are parts of this that are adjacent to the, let me see, the Space Theater, Reuben H. Fleet Space Theater. The 1935 Expo included many unique attractions, some more exploitative than others. The Midget Village and Midget Farm, built on a dollhouse scale, were billed as, quote, the world's greatest aggregation of little people, and displayed more than 100 Lilliputians at work and play, end quote. In this image, 19-year-old Trinidad Rodriguez poses with Nate Eagle, who was the sideshow promoter, who, with partner Stanley Graham, created Midget Village and its predecessor first at the 1933 Chicago Fair. Many of the little people from the 1935 Expo here went on to greater fame in the classic 1939 film The Wizard of Oz, portraying both munchkins and winged monkeys. I verified that I had the names of many of the performers at Midget Village, and many of them are in the credits of The Wizard of Oz. In addition to Midget Village, Graham and Eagle created the scandalous Zorro Gardens nudist colony. Located in a sunken garden east of the Palace of Better Housing, the Zorro Gardens was, according to the program, quote, designed to explain to the general public the ideals and advantages of natural outdoor life, end quote. Topless women and bearded men in loincloths read books, sunbathed, and acted in pseudo-religious rituals to the sun god. Also, according to the program, quote, healthy young men and women indulging in the freedom of outdoor living in which they so devoutly believe have opened their colony to the friendly and curious gaze of the public, end quote. The public's curious gaze quickly turned Zorro Gardens into the exposition's most lucrative attraction. Despite protests, Zorro Gardens lasted for the entire run of the two-year exposition. The area is now the Zorro Butterfly Gardens. Now, I worked with the Friends of Balboa Park to put up a historic sign about the history of Zorro Gardens, one of those big blue signs. I was told recently and saw for myself that someone had stolen that sign. So hopefully it could be recreated. I'm not sure how they could steal a sign 5 feet tall and 3 feet wide. But but it was done. So we hopefully we'll get that history retold in a future sign. Okay, so this is our final chapter. Let me check my time. All right. Um, this is the final chapter known as Obscure Balboa Park, and it's kind of the little odds and ends that that kind of didn't fit in with all the other subject matters. Thousands of visitors had photo postcards taken among the pigeons while sitting in wicker cars on the plaza. Known as electriquettes, these custom-made electrically powered vehicles were, according to an ad in the guidebook, quote, the only passenger conveyance permitted at the exposition, end quote. With a top speed of 3 miles per hour, the ad enthused, a child can drive it. It's great fun. These Native Americans were likely brought to San Diego to help promote or populate the Painted Desert exhibit. Now, these actually were featured in the Fatty Arbuckle and Mabel silent film of the period, and here's a freeze frame from that movie. You could actually find this on YouTube, just like everything else in the world. Now, thanks to businessman and history buff Sandy Shapery, the Electricettes returned to commemorate the centennial of the expo in 1915. My office worked with Sandy, and we created drawings to faithfully recreate these carts. And Sandy had about 30 of them manufactured. Unfortunately, the business was not sustainable, and the cars are no longer in the park. The famed Liberty Bell arrived in Balboa Park from Philadelphia on November 12, 1915, for a 3-day visit. At the official reception, thousands of schoolchildren placed floral tributes on the bell's platform. San Diego's Mayor Edwin M. Capps and dignitaries from Pennsylvania took turns praising liberty. The San Diego Choral Society concluded the program by singing patriotic songs. So I bet a lot of you didn't realize the Liberty Bell was right in the middle of Balboa Park for 3 days. It had actually come down from the San Francisco Exposition on a train, and they decided to hit them both at the same time. This is kind of a fun postcard. It's a uniquely comic postcard. It depicts a conversation between San Diego and San Francisco, dismissing the modest harbor of Los Angeles, calling it the Butt-in Bay. The two exposition host cities, nicknamed Sandy and Frisky, joke about LA's harborette being so small that it can't even keep a shark alive. It should be noted that this biting postcard was not an official exposition postcard, but was printed by San Diego's Old Mission Realty Company. I thought this was pretty clever, having the bays as the mouths of the two characters, and the tiny little LA Bay in the middle. Of course, LA's harbor is now one of the largest in the world, but at this time they were able to make fun of it. One of the reasons to hold an international exposition is to exhibit the latest products from home and abroad. There are very few postcards that actually show what was being exhibited inside the various 1915-16 Expo buildings. This image shows a cow and milkmaid sculpted out of butter in the California Counties building. That's the one that burned down at the Fireman's Ball. Also on display were handmade crafts in the building, including a table made of 2,866 pieces of inlaid wood, hem-stitched aprons, and elephants made of walnuts. So a lot of similarities with the Del Mar Fair and the types of exhibits that were there in 1915. One of the most unconventional exhibits of the 1915 Expo was the Painted Desert, sponsored by Santa Fe Railroad. The Painted Desert was promoted as, quote, the most extraordinary exhibit of Indian life ever attempted, end quote. For 25 cents, visitors could see Pueblo Indians working and playing as they do in their real homes in Arizona and New Mexico. On opening day, the San Diego Union reported, quote, the Indians are not idle, but are at work shaping their pottery and perfecting their rugs, blankets, and metallic ornaments, just as they and their ancestors have been doing for centuries. The red man, in fact, did most of the construction work, bringing with them from their neighborhood of the real painted desert in Arizona, materials in which they duplicated real conditions with unfailing accuracy. These buildings lasted after the expo into the 40s and were actually used as a Boy Scout camp until they were torn down because they were considered a fire hazard. Hidden behind the Ford building, but visible in this postcard, and you can see these horizontal lines here. Um, this is the Roads of the Pacific, where fairgoers could ride in a new Ford V8 car over winding roads along the Cabrillo Canyon. The course was modeled after 14 famously rough roads, including the Oregon Trail, China's Summer Palace Road, and Peru's Inca Freeway and the El Camino Real, to demonstrate the new Ford's smooth ride over bad terrain. In 2007, evidence of this road, and even today, evidence of the road adjacent to Interstate 5 is still there, but has all but disappeared. There's a few stone walls that are remnants of this area. You couldn't drive your own car on it, but you were given a driver and you were allowed to ride in the Ford cars and feel how good their suspension was. And with that, I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to entertain questions. Dean, are you back?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry. I'm
Sure.
trying to put my face back on there. All right. Thank you very much, David.
Sure.
And oh, here we go. Hey, okay. If anybody has any questions, please put them in the either the question and answer box or the chat feature. And it looks like we have a few already. Didn't the zoo begin? I'm sorry. Didn't the zoo beginning start on 6th Avenue by Sefton?
I'm not certain. I just know that they did carve out an area in the park near on its current grounds, and the postcard that I was showing was the entrance, which is where the current entrance is, but it was an earlier version of it. It may have been when they were still the Zoological Society, they collected the animals in another part of the park. But I'm just familiar with the current grounds, which is where they basically permanently established themselves.
Um, is the Photo Arts Building one of the original buildings in the park?
The foreign arts, yes.
It says Photo Arts. Unless that
The
was a
which?
typo. Photo Arts, was there such a
Oh,
building?
photographic arts?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Photographic Arts Museum is in the Casa de Balboa, which is a reconstruction of an original building, but that's the one that burned down when it had the Air and Space Museum in it. So it's a reconstruction from the 1980s.
Okay. When was the El Cid statue installed?
I actually have a photo of that in my book. I believe it was in the 1930s. I think it was prior to the second exposition. It was a private group that raised money and had that installed.
All right. Any other questions, anybody? Just go ahead and type them in. We've got some compliments about how wonderful your presentation was and the great photos. Oh. Uh, did the animals originally come from Wonderland in OB?
Yeah, that's a good question. There was a amusement park in Ocean Beach that only lasted a couple years, and they had some animals as well, including a lion. Yes, my understanding is that the original zoo collection was made up from animals from both the Balboa Park Expo and Wonderland.
Okay. Oops.
I see one here about Zorro Gardens. Want me
Oh,
to address that?
yeah, please do.
Yeah, Zorro Gardens was let me see here. I get them mixed up sometimes. But it was different than Zorro the sword fighter. It was only one Z. That's the official. I have the official guidebook and all the. There are a couple postcards that misspell it was with two Z's, but the official name, including the big sign that was over the entrance, was with. I'm sorry, Z with one R. Zoro, not two R's.
Yeah, I've seen that both ways too.
Yeah,
Uh,
the two R version is the famous sword fighting character, and it was mislabeled a couple times.
um, where did you get your postcards?
It's funny. I get this question almost every time I present. Um, Most of them off of eBay. That's the easiest way to kind of zero in on a particular topic because you could just enter that in the search. And it's a lot easier than going through shoe boxes and antique stores where you could find, Omaha next to San Diego, next to Paris. Um, so I have bought a few at some postcard and collectible shows. And there's a guy I know that also collects, and occasionally he makes a house call, and I see what new stuff he has. But the vast majority I purchase on eBay. And it's a great hobby to get into because you can get original historic artifacts, these postcards. Sometimes you can, buy 10 at a time for $15 or $3 or $4 each. So it's been a fun hobby.
Um, was the organ in the current pavilion originally intended for Spreckels Mission Cliff Gardens?
I don't believe so. I've not heard that story.
I have. I wonder. There must be a
Um,
legend.
the no, I believe that the organ was a custom organ built for that building in the park, and I think the whole building was $100,000, and the organ was like about half of that cost.
When was the glass botanical building built?
Yeah, there used to be this person knows the park. There used to be a wing of the botanical building to the north, which it was a T-shaped building originally. And the wing was, they called it the conservatory, but it was basically a glass greenhouse. That was part of the original building. So that was there on opening day in 1915. And it was removed years later when they added a road. And of course, the children's zoo is in that area now. But it was original to the botanical building.
Um, the somebody wants to clarify if the Committee of 100 and Forever Balboa Park are two distinct organizations.
Yeah, actually, it's been a moving target lately. Committee 100 has been their own organization since they were founded in the 60s. Uh, Separate from that, we had the Friends of Balboa Park and the Balboa Park Conservancy, and they merged and became Forever Balboa Park. And so Forever Balboa Park and Committee 100 are separate, but they do have a lot of common goals.
Great. I'm doing on time. It looks like that is all the questions that I'm seeing. Oops. Oops. All right. Well, thank you, David. That was a really enlightening presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure everybody else did too. Thanks to everybody for being here today. I had planned to tell you at this time about our upcoming tour of Paradise Point, formerly known as Vacation Village, but it's sold out already nearly a month in advance. Fortunately, you can still explore this extraordinary site through our brand new limited edition booklet, Vacation Village, a Mid-Century Island Escape. This 56-page full-color publication is both a collector's keepsake and a captivating look at the resort's rich history, iconic 1960s architecture, and lush tropical landscape design. It features newly uncovered, never-before-published information along with a trove of historic and contemporary images. Pre-orders are now available and will ship as soon as the booklet is ready, or you can pick up your copy at the Marston House Museum shop. Copies are limited, so don't miss out. And I put the link where you can pre-order along with the link when I sent out the email with the video link for today. Also, mark your calendars for next month's Penning the Past on Ramona. Historian and author Richard L. Carrico will explore Ramona's fascinating history from its early Kumeyaay inhabitants to its days as the turkey capital of the world. And if you missed any past Penning the Past lectures or want to rewatch today's program, visit the Soho San Diego YouTube channel. Thank you all again for your support, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks again, David. It's always a pleasure to have you lecture for us.
Thank you, Dean.
Have a good day, everyone.